Good morning, everybody. What is up, and welcome back. If you're new here, I'm Liz, your host here at Crimes Untold. I'm super comfy today because it's 48 degrees here in lovely New Hampshire. Anywho, that's besides the point. Today, we're not talking about something that's the happiest. We are discussing the shooting that just took place at Apalachee High School. Today we're going to be talking about that of Colt Gray, everything with his mother, Marcy Gray, and his father, Colin Gray. 14-year-old Colt Gray started opening fire at Apalachee High School. It is also reported that this attack left 2 teachers and 2 students dead. The 2 teachers were 39-year-old Richard Aspinwall and 53-year-old Christina Irami. The 2 students, apologies if I say these names wrong, also, they're both 14 years old as well, Mason Schermerhorn and Christian Angulo. There is also 9 others that were injured from the shooting as well. What is very interesting is what was reported as of last night. Apparently, the call log for the high school, which was obtained by a bulk of different news sources, shows that Marcy Gray, which is Colt Gray's mother, called the school, had a 10-minute phone call with the school about a half an hour prior to the shooting happening. Is that coincidental? I'm not sure. It was also kind of talked about as well. She has text messages to her sister, Annie Brown. And apparently there's a screenshot that was also obtained as well, that it says Marcy notified the school counselor at the high school, told them that it was emergent, that they have to go find her son and check him. I would hope that they followed through with that, but as a parent of children that go to public schools, they can't always react that quick. Now, her sister didn't comment on this, didn't comment on wanting to go into specifics as to why. His mother, Marcy Gray, warned the school, but his grandfather, Charles Palamus, or Palamus, it's Polhamus, told the New York Post yesterday, so Saturday's interview, that Marcy went to Winder, which is the city in which this high school is, and this is located about 50 miles northeast of Atlanta. And she rushed there after getting a text from her son that it just simply read, "I'm sorry, Mom." The whole situation between him and his parents is very strange, and also his 2 siblings. It's very, very strange. Colt Gray's aunt, Annie Brown, and his grandfather have also declined on speaking with any other news reporting stations. I will tell you this as well, is that Marcy and the Barrow County school system have not immediately responded for a request to, for a comment on any of this. They haven't immediately responded to any of this, which I'm sure they're probably working with their PR team, or in Marcy Gray's situation, there's a lot about that I don't understand either, especially when it comes to his father, Colin Gray. But I'm sure that the school system is working really hard with their lawyers, with their PR, to make sure that they say the correct things that they should. So it's not just Colt that is in custody, his father Colin is as well. So 14-year-old Colt Gray has been charged with 4 counts of felony murder, and he's being held without a bond at the juvenile detention facility within the area. And his father, Colin Gray, was also arraigned this past Friday. He's 54 years old. He has been charged with quite a bunch. So 2 counts of second-degree murder, 8 counts of cruelty to children, 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter. Neither him or his son have entered a plea or requested bond during these hearings. So A lot of people are very angry that Colt Gray is not being sought after for the death penalty, and there's a reason for that. Because he's under the age of 18, they cannot seek the death penalty. That was ruled out years ago. You are not allowed to be under a certain age bracket, charged with murder, and then sentenced to death. So back in 2005, there was a case. It's Roper versus Simmons, and that is when they basically took an overview of juveniles that were sentenced to death. And what they did was they looked at 17 cases that involved 17-year-old offenders, and some of them that were not Caucasian, some that were 18 to 43, like when they were looking at the cases, but they were actually like 12 to 17. They looked at a varying amount of cases, and what they determined is that because there has to be certain circumstances to seek the death penalty, there has to be mitigating circumstances to have that. So not just murder, like means of robbery, not just murder, but means with like a deadly weapon, things like that. There has to be another underlying circumstance. I've talked about this a little bit before, but what they determined is that before 2002, there in basically the federal government looked at a means of the death penalty in a certain way. And what they decided back in 2005 is that they determined that the death penalty cannot be imposed on those that are under a certain age. And they looked at different cases. One of them in particular is Thompson versus Oklahoma, where he was younger than 16, but he had the death penalty, or they had the death penalty imposed on them, even when he was under the age of 16. In 2003, they looked at the cases of Wilkins versus Missouri and Stanford versus Kentucky, and those cases were looked at because they were 16 or 17 at the time, and they also those cases weren't allowed to prohibit the death penalty. Both of them were sentenced to death. Going forward, a lot of these cases, they determined that they have to look at them psychologically, not just by the law. They have to have a full psych eval. They have to be basically examined. Their full mental health history has to be looked at, and they have to find significant cause for them to be able to be or to be able to have the death penalty used against them. If they find certain circumstances in which it shows that they should not, then they will not. I'm pretty sure the same is what has happened with Colt Gray. Due to the circumstances of his life, basically, his mental health in his life, that is a circumstance in which they will not impose the death penalty. And a lot of these cases that are affected by this, a lot of them that were sentenced to death, they then were resentenced. There's a lot of them here in New England. I know that the Beth Brody case that is being looked at, obviously the Amy Carnival case that is being looked at, he was supposed to be resentenced in 2020. That has been pushed back, obviously, because of COVID. Then we have the cases here in New Hampshire. The brothers in Rochester, New Hampshire, that killed their parents, very similar to the Menendez brothers. There's a lot of different cases around the United States in which, and even the world, in which they have to relook at and re-examine these cases because of the ages of these inmates that committed these. The basis of going to prison is rehabilitation, which is something that our prison system has moved away from for many years. And it's something that I know a lot of politicians try to fix the infrastructure for. It's very hard to do so because there's a lot of factors that goes into this infrastructure and a lot of factors that goes into trying to fix something that's not broken in people's eyes. And in these cases of these juvenile offenders, or when they're juveniles at the time, they need that rehabilitation, not just physical rehabilitation. They need mental rehabilitation, which not all prison systems have. Yes, there's jail, but that's like county jail. Then there's prison, which is our bigger prisons. And these prisons were put in place to rehabilitate these people. And it's not a lot of the offenders that we have in these prison systems look at it as a way to escape their lives now, which is not what it's meant for. These systems are meant to help them. And that's why there is certain departments that are used within prison facilities. It's not always safe to use them, but they're put in place to help these people. And I don't mean to go on a tangent about this. A lot of people don't understand the structure of why prison is prison. That's why there's certain levels of security with prisons. They have minimum, maximum, supermax. Supermax is you are a big deal offender and you need to be in solitary for 23 hours a day in your own cell, no talking to other people. That's the supermax in Colorado. I really want to see that prison in person. Something draws it to me. Like, something about that prison is very interesting to me, and I would love to see it. And there's quite a bit of people that I've talked about that have actually ended up at that supermax prison. But anywho, that's besides the point. I just wanted to give you a rundown of why they're not going after the death penalty for Colt Gray, and I'll kind of get into that when I talk more about his dad and his mom. Oh, and if I didn't mention, Colt Gray is being tried as an adult. Yes, he's 14, but because of the circumstances behind the shooting, he is being tried as an adult. He used an AR-15 that he got as a gift from his dad, well, his parents. That also comes into play here. I think that's another reason why his dad is being tried as well. But you also have to look at the Ethan Crumbley case, which I talked about, where his parents were also arrested and convicted of involuntary manslaughter. That has set a standard for these shootings, these public shootings, because it's not just the person that committed it. You have to look at their background. And I had this conversation with my sister yesterday when it comes to people with life skills, people that automatically fault and there's no accountability for their actions. Well, if you purchase a firearm for your child, you then are responsible for that firearm. You're purchasing it for them to use. They are not 18. They do not carry a license for a firearm. They don't have the necessary knowledge to successfully be okay with withholding that firearm, making sure that it is put away for safety purposes. You know what I mean? They're too young to fully understand that. And when you give them a firearm, such as the magnitude of an AR-15, the thought process should have been a little more intensive, if you will. Obviously, the firearm in question was a little different with Ethan Crumbley. He got a SIG handgun, a SIG Sauer handgun. And that was also a gift to him from his parents. So it was a Christmas gift, but it was locked away. The same thing with this AR-15. It was supposed to be locked away. But that's not the point as to why his dad is also charged. Your child is your child. Doesn't matter what age they are. The things they do also affects you. They're your person. You're custodially custodially. You are custodially obligated to make sure that they make it through life to 18. Once they're 18, they're a legal adult. They're still your obligation because they're your child, but it's less on your plate because they legally can now make the decisions they want to. Colt Gray is 14. His parents are in their 50s. They are still legally obligated to make sure that he has the things that he needs in life. That is not what happened in this case because his home life was bad, which is what a lot of people are talking about right now. So his parents, Colin and Marcy, divorced. She took his two younger siblings, and then Colin and Colt moved together. They were evicted from their prior address in Jefferson, which is another town. But that's not all. So his mom, I don't know what started her downfall, but she was in a very good career. She was a senior quality engineer. Being an engineer is a pretty good job. And where she's a senior quality engineer, she has a master's of science in occupational safety and health, which is a really good field to be a part of. She has a bachelor's of science and technology. Yeah, I don't know what caused this downfall because she has a very lengthy criminal record that's like 17 years long, starting in 2007. She's got vehicular misdemeanors, DUIs, possession charges, domestic violence. She has been prosecuted in 4 different counties in Georgia, Forsyth, Barrow, Fulton, and Ben Hill County. The one in Ben Hill County is civil fraud charges when she tried to purchase a vehicle and she used bad checks and things like that. Yeah, she's got a lengthy criminal record. The newest ones or the most up-to-date ones are all possession charges, where she had a vast majority of drugs, cyclobenzaprine, methamphetamine, fentanyl, using somebody else's license plate on her car so she could, evade police. She used a variety of different things to conceal her identity, and I don't know what caused her downfall. And then we also have Colin Gray, his dad, who gave him an AR-15 rifle for Christmas last year. December of 2023, he got this Christmas. He was very open about telling the police that he gave him this. And the other thing too is that this is not the first time, it's the first executed shooting that he did, but this is not the first time he's threatened doing this before. So back in May of 2023, Colt and his dad were interviewed by the FBI after they received tips about him going on Discord, which is a server for gamers, talking about shooting up the middle school he was going to. And this was at West Jackson Middle School in Hoschton. Hopefully I said that right. It's Hoschton. And this school is about 17 minutes away from Jefferson Middle School, where he kind of improved after. Colin Gray in that interview also mentioned that he had issues at the middle school he was at, and this was after the threat was made of him shooting up that said middle school. Yep. During this interview with the FBI, Colt was very calm. He was very reserved. He was 13 at the time. He explained that his Discord was actually hacked, but was deleted. And said it was deleted before he moved in with his dad. And this was due to it being frequently hacked. Obviously, Discord is something that you can use for real-time text video. There's voice communication on there. It's for streamers, it's for gamers. My husband uses it. That's how he, can talk to his friends if they don't have mics and things like that. He denied making any of these threats and said that he would never make such a statement. And even went on to say, even if it was a joke, he wouldn't make this statement. And he said that even with the proof showing that this Discord was associated with his email. IP addresses at the time kind of follow around the family's eviction pattern, that the account had been accessed from different locations of Statesboro, Fort Valley, and even could have been accessed in Buffalo, New York as well, which is kind of weird. So his username is written in Russian, and it translates to the name Lanza, Lanza. That should ring a bell for some people who know about shootings. Allegedly, it references Adam Lanza, who is the infamous shooter from Sandy Hook Elementary School. Yeah. So that also showed a little more intent for FBI agents when they were looking into this. The investigators also concluded that there wasn't enough evidence to substantiate any claim that he was responsible for the Discord account, even though it was linked to his email address. They couldn't show that it was him, things like that. This case is being highly compared to the Ethan Crumbley case because they are eerily similar. This is another thing that I talked to my sister about, is we can't take things and plop them on a chart. And I mean that in this way. When we study people psychologically or sociologically, we look at them in a group or look at them solo. And with that data that we take from them, we can oftentimes create behavior plans. We can create different or get the data we need in order to generate something to help improve these behaviors. And we can put it on a graph and we can see where they need help, where they don't need help. And when we are reintroducing these behaviors or how to properly do these behaviors, they can then maintain it. They can constantly train it. When they constantly train it, they then master it, but it has to come back into maintenance so they can make sure that they can still do it. And what I mean by this is I'm kind of using this as an analogy. You can't take school shooters and plop them on a graph and see how they are so similar. The similarity in this case is obviously mental state, getting guns as Christmas gifts from their prospective parents. It is extremely similar. Ethan Crumbley, his shooting was in Michigan. Colt Gray, Georgia. It's very hard to determine the pattern of these school shooters. Ethan Crumbley's parents, they're the first ones to be convicted of involuntary manslaughter when it comes to the act of their child committing a school shooting. They were sentenced both to 10 years in prison. Ethan Crumbley was sentenced to life without parole for the shootings of his 4 classmates, wounding 6 others. There was a psychologist that did, I'm going to talk briefly about his case and then go back into Colt Gray, just so you can kind of understand. They look at him fully with a psychologist. The psychologist said that he was experiencing psychosis. He had a break from reality at the time of the shooting. He suffered from OCD, anxiety, and depression, which is all things that a lot of these, not to kind of categorize them, but a lot of them suffer from severe mental health issues. And it's something that we need to take into account. Obviously, now I've come to notice is that parental mental health is also becoming a giant thing, because a lot of parents in the world, which this kind of falls also on his parents as well, and any parents in general that are related to or around a school shooter, they don't have the proper life skills in order to handle their said offspring, which is why I said that parents are custodially obligated to make sure their children gets from 0 to 18. Another reason why they are having the blame of this crime put on them as well. They are responsible for their child. The acts of their child, they are responsible. And they are using these 2 cases highly with one another because Colt Gray surrendered. Ethan Crumbley was taken into custody. Not all school shooters were taken into custody. Adam Lanza killed himself. Richard Weiss killed himself. There's things that we need to take into consideration where they are similar, yes, but they also are drastically different. The Columbine shooters, they had a pact of killing themselves at the end of what they did. It's not for the faint of heart to look into these cases. It's very hard to read the context of these cases if you've never read into them. I'm just a very strange person, and I like to read about these things because it's something that piques my interest. It always has. It's not just the criminal case itself; it's the actual, like, everything within it, the autopsy reports, things like that. There are certain things in there that helps you realize exactly how the scene is and how things could have gone down. You can actually mentally replay it, and it's things like that that it piques my interest. I should have just gone into law. I maybe in the future I'll look into that. But I like the field that I'm in. I love it. So let me give you a little timeline of the shooting. I know I said that it at about 10:20 the shooting happened. And actually the first shot was reported at 9:30. 10:20 is the time in which the sheriff's office received the report of an active shooter. And the law enforcement of this area were at the scene within 2 minutes. The resource officers at the high school also responded as well. If you don't know what a resource officer is, they're there to make sure that truancy is not a thing. Truancy is, kids leaving school, kids always skipping class, things like that. They're there for a purpose, and they were there on scene. They were very swift. They got there. They made sure that things were contained. Colt Gray was interviewed after being taken into custody. That's how quick things got. And that's not something that happens with every shooting. Within the last 24 hours as well, there's been more that's come out about his school life and things that his father has said. Colt Gray was bullied. His father did go on to discuss this when he was interviewed. He said that back in 2023, when they were investigating with the Discord server, there was a discussion that was had with the principal in regards to bullying. Colt Gray, apparently, he finished 7th grade and he kind of had a relief. He only had a few friends. He was picked on all the time, and he was just constantly ridiculed. Apparently, people would touch him, pinch him, things like that. Colt Gray didn't want to fight anybody, but obviously, words can sometimes hurt more than physical actions. And bullying there's always a constant talk about it within the school districts and within parents. And there's a lot that is not done to stop it. And that obviously starts with home life, and then it's reflected into their public life. And that's one of those things that people really need to think about, because the way that you portray yourself, your children see you. You are a positive influence on your child. When you then start becoming a negative influence on your child, you are then showing them negative behaviors. They are then going to learn because they're seeing it. And as we all know, monkey see, monkey do, these children are going to do those things, like with how they dress, how they speak, things they watch, certain things like that. For instance, my children don't behave the same way that a lot of other kids behave in public schools because we are traditional parents. We give them life lessons. We don't give them everything they want all the time to, help their dopamine in their brain. No, we don't do that. Our children learn that you work for the things that you have. That's why they don't always get the things that they want, like within the same minute. The way I was raised, the way my husband was raised, obviously vastly different, because there is an age gap. But I prefer my children to understand the worth of things and working for things rather than getting it on a silver platter. And that unfortunately is how the world is right now. Is parents oftentimes will just give in to their kids to give them whatever they want so they can be mentally free of their children, which is not how parenting is. You bring that child into the world, you take care of that child. And unfortunately, for most cases, when it comes to school shooting, a lot of it involves mental health, bullying, problems at home, a divided family, where they're living. A lot of that comes into play. And of course, unfortunately, he was bullied. I don't have empathy for him. I'm just saying, as a neutral person looking in, he was bullied. He got a firearm as a gift from his parent. There's a situation in which he talked about shooting and guns, and it was just something that him and his dad did. So he knew how to use a weapon, and he was encouraged by his father to be more active outdoors, spend less time on video games. And there was a time in which Colt actually killed his first deer, and his dad was very proud. And his dad actually pulled out that photo and showed the investigator who was investigating him back in 2023 and said that it was the greatest day ever seeing his son get his first deer. There's nothing wrong with hunting as long as your child understands the repercussions of using said firearm. That's all I'm going to say about that, because I know a lot of people feel really funky about firearms. The eviction of the family as well back in 2022, the summer of 2022, was also very harsh on the family as well. This was a rental they lived in a suburban area, in which they were obviously displaced. And when things were moved out, they found a multitude of firearms, hunting bows, ammunition in the master bedroom. All of these were turned over to the deputy at the time for safekeeping, so they weren't on the outside with the family's possessions. There was copies of exactly what they found in the home that are in on record at the deputy's office, and they did that on purpose. So there was never a reason for this eviction ever noted, but Colin Gray, obviously, when they talked about him in 2023, did say that he did pay his rent. Following this eviction, that's when Marcy left him. She took the two younger siblings, and then Colt stayed with his dad. This really hurt him because it seems that he was extremely close to his mom, and sometimes father-son relationships are a little hazy. We'll say that. And mother-son relationships are there's not a way to really describe it. His parents have we'll just say lucrative jobs. His dad is in construction. He worked on high rises down in the area. If you work on buildings like that, then you're making pretty good money. Working with the giant cranes, lifting things like that. And his mom was an engineer. Their means are very good for this family. And the downfall spiral that happened with this family is something that is just something that you never want to see happen, because you don't want to look at a family and see them go down in such a negative way. I think in closing of this video for today, I'm very curious. I want to know why his mom has not been charged. I think that's the biggest. There's something about it is kind of odd, because she's been talking a lot about, or she has talked about her actions, what she's done. She was the one that left the tip about the shooting or attempt shooting at the middle school. She was the one that tipped that off. And she called the school before this shooting happened. So I'm very curious. Hopefully that information will come out. I'll keep you guys updated about that. But obviously, at this time, it's only him and his dad that have been charged in connection to this shooting for Apalachee High School. But I want to know your thoughts. Leave them in a comment down below. I would love to know what you think. I know a lot of the things that I touch base on is very like taboo today, but it's those things that you which I know I've mentioned previously in other school shooting videos that I've done, um, like the Pearl High School shooting, things, the different shootings that I've covered. A lot of it is very people don't want to talk about it because it's something that we never want to think is ever going to happen, but it does happen, unfortunately. There was one that was very close to home to me, very close to home, um, the other day, and that was very interesting because there's never fully been an active shooter in the state of New Hampshire in a school setting before. Um, so it's one of those things where you're just like, yep, got to take it with, just got to take it day by day. And my heart goes out to all of the victims involved in this, all of the wounded, the 4 that have died. I'm so sorry for your family's loss of you. This was something that I'm I hope we'll get more information as to why these 4 were targeted. Sometimes there's no target, sometimes there is a target. So I'm sure that the motive or the information of why these things happened will come out. But that, my friends, is the information I have for you about the very sad school shooting at Apalachee High School involving Colt Gray. Yeah, I'll see you in the next one.